Okay, so you just did the Diastasis Recti assessment and you do have Diastasis Recti. What should you do? So the first thing you should do is go to the breathing chapter and learn how to connect to those muscles through the breath. So we're going to breathe into those muscles, get them to stretch and expand, and then train that recoil back. This is a really important step to start to connect to those muscles. You'll also want to make sure that you do the part of the breathing tutorial that talks about the diaphragm. You want to make sure that the diaphragm isn't pushing down onto your abdominal muscles, because then the abdominal muscles can't contract and push your tummy organs back in and up. The diaphragm's always pushing down, and this makes it very hard for the abdominal muscles to do their job or to move back to where you want them to move back to. You want to check out the tutorial on alignment, because some alignments are not as conducive to healing a diastasis recti as others. Being a mum gets us in some really funky postures. There's nothing wrong with that, but we do want to try and get out of that as much as possible so that there's more availability in the abdominal and pelvic floor muscles. You'll want to go through the core module of this program. You want to work your way through, starting with level 1 and building up slowly. When you get to that module, I'll give you a tutorial on how to know what exercises are the right level for you, so that you're not doing something too easy or something too hard. How to know if it's something that's kind of doing damage or isn't really doing anything. But you'll also want to strengthen the rest of your body. So please don't skip the strength section of the program, because when you have a strong back, when you have strong legs, when you have a strong bum, this is all your scaffolding, and this makes it so much easier to be in good alignment, and it takes some of the brunt off of your core and pelvic floor muscles. So please don't neglect the rest of your body just because you have diastasis recti, because your back, your arms, your shoulders, your chest, your bum, your legs, all of these muscles still need you and still need to be strong. You're a lot more than just your abdominal muscles. And finally, I want to leave you with a list of do's and don'ts, because these are really, really popular, right? You go on the internet and it says, don't do crunches, don't do planks, don't do sit-ups, don't do blah, 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 blah. Well, I'm gonna completely smash all of that. It's a massive myth. In this program, there are sit-ups, like full sit-ups, there are crunches, there are planks, there are everything. There really are no do's and don'ts with diastasis recti that you can apply to all women with diastasis recti. As I said before, diastasis recti looks totally different on different women, so it's impossible to apply the same rule to all women with diastasis recti. What I'm going to teach you how to do in the core section of the program is how to check to see if an exercise is right for you or if it's too much for you right now. So for now, if you have diastasis recti, or if you have or if you have very weak abdominal muscles, you might not be able to do a plank for now. You might not be able to do crunches, and you might not be able to do sit-ups. We'll start with much gentler exercises. We'll start to really engage the core through the breath and through gentle movement, but then we'll build up to more difficult core exercises as your core gets stronger. When you get to the section on core exercises, I'll explain all about that. I just want to jump in here and add something at this point that I forgot in the main video. And that is that even if you did the diastasis recti assessment, it's really important to also do the functional assessment, because in the diastasis recti assessment that we did, all we're really checking for is if you have a gap, how wide the gap is and how deep the gap is. That's it. And then also like how the connective tissue in that gap reacts to a couple of different things. Like if we can, if it's well connected to the rest of the core. All the information that we really have from that assessment is about the gap. We're just describing the gap. And while that's useful information, that's good to know, and it may be a goal to make the gap narrower, it may be a goal to increase tension in the gap, but it's not the only information that matters when it comes to diastasis recti. What also matters, or arguably what matters more, is how your abdominal muscles cope with different movements. And that's exactly what we check in the functional assessment. We do a few different movements at varying degrees of difficulties, and we see what happens to those abdominal muscles. In particular, we're testing to see if you can control the muscles or if they kind of dome, if they bulge out. That's really important information to have, because you could have a really wide diastasis, but the connective tissue works really well and you can control your abdominal muscles really well, and there's no bulging, there's no doming, you have really good strength in the abdominal muscles. On the other hand, you could have a very small gap but the muscles are really weak. So they're kind of two different, we're testing two different parameters here. We're testing the gap, which is information, but it's important information, but it's not the be all and end all. It's not that important. What's really, really important is how your muscles behave in different movements, and that's in the functional assessment. So make sure you do the functional assessment to get the full picture of what your abdominal muscles are doing, how strong your abdominal muscles are, and don't just think about the gap.